I truly appreciate kindness. I appreciate people checking up on me. I appreciate a quick message. I appreciate those who ask if I'm okay. I appreciate every single person in my life who has tried to brighten my days. It's the little things that matter the most, and that was posted on Instagram. Women's First Class. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Toy Talks podcast. My name is Toy Washington, and bi-weekly I try to post a new episode of the Toy Talks podcast. My life has changed a lot, in fact. I am a businesswoman, I am a career woman, and a new mum. So it does mean that sometimes I can't hit that bi-weekly quota for a podcast, but what I can tell you, and very comfortably so, is that I have a catalogue with a plethora of podcast episodes. I share my blueprint and how I've been successful in the world of work. I share my ups and downs, my highs, my lows, but more importantly, the blueprint strategy I have utilized to gain success. It hasn't been easy, and there are still situations that I face in the workplace, because irrespective of how senior you are, especially as a black woman, I feel like our experiences in the world of work is just different, both because we are women and because we are black. And this is why I feel this podcast has become a very much a safe space for black women. I don't just have a podcast, I have a website and I have masterclasses. You see, for me, I always thought that podcasts alone was never going to be sufficient. I needed to also support it with masterclasses. So for example, we have the CV interview redundancy masterclass, we have the passing your probation masterclass, we've got the maternity masterclass, the freelance and consulting interim masterclass too, and a few more to add to that. For me, I think it's really important that we are also proactive in how we gain success, hence why I have the masterclasses, but more importantly that we come here and I come here and share my experiences and how I have strategically navigated the world of work, working in predominantly white dominated spaces, but also in organizations where black women are often overlooked and undervalued. That being said, I really want to do this episode because number one, it's due, it's like past due. I received a dilemma in the mailbox and it really made me think about kind of, you know, certain things that happened in my career and how I could lean into my experiences to be able to help this young lady. So we're going to get into that a little later. But I want to talk about silent treatment. And I want to talk about the toxicity of what it actually is. So a lot of us are from Afro-Caribbean backgrounds, and I know that my parents often would, especially when I got to an age where hitting me didn't really make a difference, albeit that I think my parents tried to use other tactics because, I say parents, but I think silent treatment was always weaponized, and I know that it has affected me because my trauma response to silent treatment is to become like go into myself. It's like I go into a shell and I go into protective mode and I become very stoic, because for me growing up the silent treatment was really difficult. I felt invisible. That's how it made me feel. And it was a form of punishment, but also a form of control. As I got older, I recognized that the silent treatment had no power over me, especially when I left the house. So I never had to kind of deal with silent treatment like intensely, but obviously, you know, it was still done like outside of the house, but it didn't have as much of an effect as it would do if I was in the house, if that makes sense. And I'm not sitting here criticizing the technique that my parent used, because I feel like at that time my parents had to raise me, so they had to lean into what they knew or what they thought would, you know, render some type of result. But it has created a trauma response in me, and you can then imagine going into the workplace having to deal with that. It kind of triggers me, and the trauma response of my home is now adapted in the workplace, because to silent treatment, I will completely shut down, and I will repay the silent treatment with silent treatment. I will pretend that person does not exist, and I don't care if you're a manager, I don't care if you're a director, and I don't care if you're a CEO, because what you're not going to do in the workplace is treat me like I'm your child when your own child is walking around with a police tag, or treat me like I'm less than by using the silent treatment to try and manipulate me when your wife don't even recognize you in your own house. That's not what you're going to do. You're not going to give me the silent treatment when your husband is having 4 affairs, darling. That's what we're not going to do in the workplace. I remember I was working for a massive organization, and they're huge. Like, they're a big deal in their sector and in their industry. And I remember when I had to make a formal complaint against the manager, who I was in a meeting with my direct line manager, regarding a contract that they went out of process on, and I was giving them the contractual advice. And this senior manager, he was actually a director, threw documents at me, and my line manager, who was sat right there, did nothing. And as the days passed, nothing was done. So I decided to make a formal complaint, and HR took it on. My HR business partner was actually a black man, and he had shared with me that I wasn't the first person to raise concern, but I was the first person to make it a formal grievance complaint. That being said, when we had the grievance meeting, this director was there with a big notepad and pen, huffing and puffing, trying to make himself like inflated self-importance, when the only thing that's important here is that you assaulted me, motherfucker. And you can have all the notepads and all the pens and big biros in the world. The fact is, this is what I want, this is what you are going to do, and if you do not do it, I'm happy to report you to the police. And that was my position. I got my formal apology, and I wouldn't necessarily say there was changed behavior, but there was an awareness that I was willing to take it where it needed to go if you disrespect me in the workplace. And at that time, I think what drove me to it is I had never had somebody physically try to assault me, and I felt like that paper was one step closer to being physically assaulted. And if this happened now, believe me that this person, they would pay this person off, because it's not, especially the circumstance in which it happened, it's not something that an organization would ever want out. They did try to get me to sign an NDA to not discuss it outside. I was like, you can stick your NDA up your ass. What I did say to them is, I don't see a reason to sign an NDA to deal with this when I'm not the person who perpetrated the act. Maybe the person who actually assaulted me should sign an NDA and also a document that says that they would never do that again. And HR just kind of scurried away. But as a repercussion of making that formal, there was like a wall of silence. And what the director had done is, when he was made aware that I was making a formal grievance complaint, I will never forget. And remember, I was still quite young. I was like in my mid-20s, but I was young in a sense that I still didn't understand the dynamic and the strategy of navigating the world of work. I think that a lot of the situations, a lot of the trauma that I have received in the world of work has shaped me as a career woman and has made me who I am and enabled me to be able to pass on my blueprint. I get all of that. But in the throes of just trying to make money and just trying to do my thing, I was traumatized. But the wall of silence that followed as a consequence was equally as horrible. So I remember after filing the complaint, within 24 hours, he was told of the grievance complaint. I even remember when it happened, because I just remember him coming to the office, and I think he'd already been in the office because all his stuff was in his office, and he had come from somewhere. And I felt him even before I saw him. And as he passed my desk, the look he gave me, and I just remember there was this sinking feeling in my heart, but I knew that I had to do this. Like, if I was going to have any type of remnants of peace, and if I'm going to set some boundaries, I had to make this complaint. So within 48 hours, I remember coming into the office, and everyone was acting strange. So usually when someone comes in, they're like, morning, morning, everyone responds or whatever. And no one responded to my morning. At that point, I knew very well that they were made aware of this grievance complaint, and this director had basically recruited all his cronies to make my life a living hell. And they were going to do it through a wall of silence. They would go to lunch together, they wouldn't invite me. I would like go into the kitchen breakout area, and as soon as I walked there, there'd be a silence. We would have team meetings, and I might raise my hand, and I was ignored several times. And it took about 5 days, 5 to 7 days before the actual grievance hearing happened. And I remember there was one time I was in a meeting, and I was meant to chair this meeting. And every time I spoke, people in the room would speak on top of me, or I was drowned out, and they would be sniggering and laughing. And bearing in mind, I was one of 2 black people in the team, and the other black woman on my team, she was nice enough, but I just remember her also being placed in a really awkward position, because does she stand with the truth, and does she stand with the fact that I'm advocating for myself, or does she go with the majority to make her life peaceful? And I never judged her, and I never would judge her for any decision that she would make, but she made her decision. So in that meeting, and one thing with me, you can't bully me in the workplace. You can't, because my biggest bully was my mother, you see. So anyone trying to bully me, it's not gonna run, because believe me when I tell you, if there is anything that I will never stand for, is being bullied, being a bully, or witnessing bullying. I'm not that person, especially as the woman I am today. You know, I'd rather just walk away than stand there and watch bullying and not say anything. I have to say something. I am that person. I can't help it. I just can't, because that could, you know, I see myself in that person. Or now I have a child as well. Like, I never want my child to ever be in a situation like that, and no one back her or advocate for her or defend her. And equally as well, I believe in karma. I do. So so in that meeting, they were talking over me, whatever, and I just got fed up, and I just said, you know something, I'm growing increasingly irritated and damn right angry at the fact that you guys seem to think that you could treat me in this way, because I am the person that was on the receiving end of being assaulted. But you guys want to stand on the side of licking his, and I said it like that, licking this director's ass, because you want to be seen as being favored, so that you guys feel like maybe you'll get promoted or get preferential treatment. And let me tell you something, you all should be thanking me, because I'm telling you right now, it could have been any one of you, and maybe you wouldn't do anything about it, but I personally don't come to work to have documents thrown at me, because I'm not saying what suits someone. And equally is that, if you guys want to disrespect me, you don't want to talk to me, okay, cool, but what you're not going to do is disrespect me when I talk, because I've done nothing to any of you. And in fact, I expect an apology, because I've come here to do my job, and you guys have come to work to be in the playground. That's exactly what I said. So they just walked out. They you know. And the black woman was like straggling my hand, and she goes, Toya. I said, yeah. She goes, I don't think you want to do this, you know, because I don't think it will end how you think it's going to end. And I said to her, no, I don't think you want me to do this, because you and I are both black women, and you don't want to be tarred with the same brush as me, i.e. either being a snitch or being the person that shakes the table. And I'm shaking the table, and I'm shaking everything, because no one's going to throw a piece of paper at me. No one's going to throw documents at me, and I'm not going to come to work to be afraid to do my job. And she just walked off. After the hearing, during the hearing, I call it a hearing, but the HR meeting, the grievance complaint meeting, I said it. I said there is also a wall of silence within the team, but it's the silence towards me as punishment for standing up for myself. And I know that that's because you've told about, oh, I didn't tell anyone. What are you talking about? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And this was during a time when I didn't think of like burn folders and things like that. Like, do you understand? I still believed that people had some form of integrity. But you know, when you get burned so many times, you're learning it, because now here we are. So HR was like, oh, that they don't want to talk about anyone else, whatever. And I said, yeah, okay, fine. But I'm just telling you that I'm now in a hostile environment. And anyway, as a result of the meeting, I got a formal apology, and I got an email basically saying that he will refrain from such conversations and such behaviour. Sorry, not conversation. He will refrain from such behaviour, and that he would love to have a one-to-one meeting with me. And I said, you will never ever be in a room alone with me. There will always be someone there. And I copied HR in. I said, whilst I acknowledge receipt of your apology, the true evidence of an apology is changed behaviour. He was rage, and I know that made him mad, because it was like, why are you not accepting my apology? Well, the other thing that people don't realise is you don't actually have to accept someone's apology. It's a choice. I respect the effort, but I accept change behaviour. And I mean, I was in that organisation for about 2.5 years, and that was just one in an example of experiences that I had. But in advocating for myself, what it meant is that he went and obviously had conversations with people, and he let people know, if you take it there with Toya, this is what is going to be the consequence. So people are aware that I am not the doormat. And sometimes you have to make an example of one to teach the others. And yes, you know, there are going to be situations where advocating for yourself, sometimes the consequence is the silent treatment, or the consequence is feeling like you are the odd one out, or you're treated less than. But there's a reality. And the reality is, I would rather be treated and like that with the silent treatment, and treated like I'm not part of a team, than to be bullied or to be made into a victim. I'm not prepared to do it. I will never be that person. And, you know, after that happened and everything, I did say to HR that it needs to go on his file, because you guys are upholding my complaint, because he didn't deny that it happened. What he said is he didn't mean to do it. So whether you meant it or not, the fact is you did it. And HR had confirmed in an email that they uphold my complaint, and whilst a consequence could be they take it further, they hope that what I have asked for would be sufficient, i.e. an acceptance, an apology, and an email and stuff like that. And for me, that was good enough, because I wasn't interested in him losing his job. I was interested in making an example of him to teach others, because what I couldn't do or couldn't have is other people on his level then using their power to oppress me. I can't, especially when we know our ancestral history of oppression. I can't come to the workplace to be oppressed in your office structure that represents a ship. Honey, we ain't doing that. And I feel like, you know, I have a podcast episode on boundaries. I speak about boundaries. I speak about, you know, not oversharing. I speak about so many things. But the silent treatment is so important to talk about, because it is a form of bullying. You see, back then, I didn't use that word because I didn't acknowledge or realize that it was a form of bullying. But it is. It's where somebody uses their position of power to oppress you and manipulate others into believing that you are the enemy, and therefore you are treated in disadvantageous way, and made to feel that you do not belong, and made to feel as though you are insignificant and your feelings are not considered. Me, I will define bullying for you anyhow you want to. You see this English grammar, I'll grammar it Grammarly. Yes, call me Grammarly, because I'm never gonna be the person that you think I should be in order for me to fit in your team. I realized a long time ago, I don't need to fit in. I'm not a puzzle, okay? What I need to be able to do is work collaboratively. Likability is relative, it's subjective. And yes, you know, a lot can be said about likability, like in an interview process. In the workplace, I would rather be respected than feared, but likability is a choice. And I have realized over the years, and what I'm going to teach my daughter is, it's not people's job to like you. It's nice to be liked, but if we live our life on a token of likability, we're going to find ourselves concentrating on staying in people's good graces, rather than setting boundaries that will cause us to receive respect. And I think this is what people don't understand. People are too willing to compromise their integrity to be liked. And for me, I felt like if I didn't make the formal complaint, I would be compromising my integrity so that I could be liked and accepted. But where do you go from throwing paper or dashing documents? You know, are you going to throw a pen at me? Are you going to scream and humiliate me in front of my peers? My line manager clearly doesn't give a shit. My line manager clearly doesn't see anything wrong with it. And I did raise that in my complaint against this director, that my line manager did nothing to protect me. And my line manager has a duty of care for my mental health and well-being. At the time, I just said duty of care. But now I would rephrase it and say duty of care to make sure that my mental health and well-being is protected. These are the things I would say now. But back then, it was just, he has a duty of care and he is not exercising that in defending me. He didn't raise this, he didn't have a meeting with the director. It was like, it was just the status quo. And if that is the culture here, that's fine, but I'm not prepared to be a victim of what is accepted and what is toxic. I refuse. I just wasn't. And I'm so happy that I did that, because the win wasn't about getting him sacked. I didn't give a shit about that. I think the win for me was setting an example and making an example of him so that other people understood how to engage with me. And there was a quiet confidence I had. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It was really uncomfortable for months. It was very, very uncomfortable. And there is a way that the silent treatment will be done to manage you out. And sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, are you willing to burn it all down? You know, and I mean this figuratively. Like, are you willing to, you know, I say, burn every bridge and still stand firm in your convictions? And I think that the answer has to be yes sometimes, because what you cannot do is run the risk of suffering so that you don't have to deal with certain situations. People say, oh, I'm not confrontational, but sometimes it's not about being confrontational. It's about confronting toxicity and confronting bullies so that you can reset your work environment. And at least if you can't do that, you're resetting how people engage with you. So I hope that helps, and I hope that gives people perspective. I feel like many of us are from that generation of parents who would be so grateful to have a job. Don't upset the apple cart, or, you know, don't make yourself a target. But you're already a target if you don't do something, because you're a target to everyone else who views your inactivity as an open door to disrespect you or make you feel less than. And I feel like a lot has changed from my parents' time. You know, we have access to social media, for one. Number two, I feel like society encourages conversation, which means it's encouraging us to talk. And I think that if you think you're going to navigate work by, you know, going under the radar and not saying anything, it's usually those people who end up being the target of such work abuse, like the silent treatment, or made to not kind of defend and advocate for yourself. And don't get me wrong, I think there are certain things that you overlook, like if somebody's slightly short with you in a conversation at work, or if maybe your ideas are not being valued. You know, is that personal, or is that to do with, you know, it's all speculative. And I think to an extent you can kind of observe things. But when something is obviously and directly targeted at you, you have a duty to yourself. Because first and foremost, you have to protect your mental health and well-being before you can expect other people to. They may have a legal duty of care to do so, but you have a psychological duty of care to maintain your mental health. Because I tell everybody, your mental health is so important, and it's the main thing that you have. You don't have your mental health, to be honest, you don't have anything. And this is why if anybody seeks to tamper or tap dance on my mental health, you're out. There's no second chances, there's no conversations, you're gone. Because if I lose my mental health, I lose myself. And I lose myself, I have nothing. And I have people that depend on me. And more importantly, I depend on myself. So what you are not gonna do is tap dance and play with my mental health for whatever reason. There is no reason. Least of all, a workplace that continues to make me feel like I'm not good enough, or that the bar is too high for me to climb, or I shouldn't even consider, or I don't see representation of people who look like me. So inadvertently you're telling me there's no space for me. You can't go through all of that in the workplace, be bullied, tormented, and just made to feel like shit. And on top of it, expected to work hard. For you to play with my mental health, you must be crazy. Because listen, like Harriet Tubman did not fight for freedom for me to maintain the bondage that you think that you should be having over me. You must be mad. I'm not just a free spirit. What I am is not going to tolerate your bullshit. I remember when there was this organization I was leaving at the time, and I was leaving because the new management that came in was a fucking piece of shit, and he was disrespectful, he was useless, yeah, and he was a misogynistic prick. And I refused to work for him. So what did I do? I found pastures new. And the leaving, you know, they had a leaving thing, and I warned them I didn't want one, but lo and behold, they have to, because he wanted to get his last knife in. And he was like, you know, Toya is a force to be reckoned with. And I said, it blurred it out. I said, you make me sound like a thunderstorm. And he just looked at me and I said, well, you must be the lightning then. I said it just like that. Bitch, I'm on my way out. He's a little bitch. He is a little bitch. I'm on my way out. When I said that, his face dropped. You're not going to tell me I'm a force to be reckoned with. Effectively say to people, and it's in the tone and context he was saying it, basically making me feel like I'm a troublemaker. No, I just don't want to work for your stupid, ungrateful jackass. I don't want to work for you. Especially when you're saying that to people that my face doesn't fit. So motherfucker, how my face don't fit? You've been here for 24 hours. My face don't fit. Okay, cool. So I did what I do. And when I made the decision to leave, you should have seen him there panicking. And I ended up coming back as a contractor. You paid me 4 or 5 times more on a day rate than you were paying me in a salary. So go see that force and reckon with that, motherfucker. Anyway, sorry. Let's move on to the dilemma. Hi, Toya. And this dilemma is entitled Training Contract Offer, Please Help. I hope you and Kay and baby TK are doing very well. Sending lots of love. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now. I found you through TikTok, and honestly, it has been such a blessing. As the eldest daughter in a Nigerian household, I really resonate with you. I feel like I finally have someone who can give me good advice and help me, rather than me always being the one to help my parents and siblings. I recently got a training contract, and I recently got an offer for a training contract at XYZ company to start September 2024. I work at XYZ organization as a trainee assistant. I think that's what TA stands for, and have been there since November 2022. They gave me my second location choice in Liverpool. By the way, I've had to change things here because we maintain people's anonymity. And not my first choice of London, due to not having enough seats being available. The salary is 10k lower in Liverpool, and also the seat I want isn't guaranteed to be available. I've been looking for a training contract since 2020, and I'm sure I want to qualify as a solicitor. For context, I'm 22, and I graduated last year. I studied LLB law. The firm are giving me a grant of 30,000 whilst I study for my SQE exam. So SQEs is like the qualifying exams to become a lawyer, and I get 1 year away to do it full time. I got to the interview stage for XYZ LMNOP company and QRSTUV company, but I ended up being rejected by both firms. These were London training contracts and a much higher salary. Should I accept the offer from XYZ company and continue to apply for 2026 year intake for the 2 firms above? Should I focus on qualifying earlier and just apply for associate positions at other firms in London once I've finished my training contract at XYZ company in the Manchester office? For context, I am also helping my boyfriend secure a training contract, and this process has been really draining for the both of us. He has already started preparing for his SQE exams without a training contract offer, and we are both really determined to become lawyers. So should I forget the money and location and just focus on the goal to qualify, then chase the money and location after? I'm still young, so XYZ company can't be the last stop for me in my legal career. So should I just take it as easy and easy and a fast way to qualify? Thanks for your help, Toya. Love, Anonymous. First and foremost, I'm gonna say that I never advocate for, you know, if you have a job, then taking a pay cut for an organization, like I've seen so many times on TikTok. But what I am going to say here in context of your situation, to those of you who do not know, in my circles and many other circles, I would be referred to as a part qualified lawyer. Part qualified because I only did 6 months of my 2-year training contract and I had exemptions. The reason I chose not to be a lawyer, solicitor, whatever, is because I knew I'd earn more money going into the field that I have done, which is a commercial contract manager. I also lost sight of a lot of things. I was very much disillusioned by law and justice. But I have a lot of friends who are lawyers, and I really respect it, and I work with lawyers as part of my job. And to be honest with you, I have no regrets. But something that you've been very clear about here is your passion to become a lawyer. Now, I know how hard it is to get a training contract. One of my friends, it took her 6 whole years. And I one day asked her, is it worth it? And she said, I spent too much time chasing the training contract when I should have been chasing the bag. And this is what I'm going to say, because you've asked me for my advice. I think you should take the training contract in Manchester. And I'll tell you why. Because once you qualify, you can go anywhere. In fact, you can become a contractor. The money you would make as contracting as a solicitor, I'm telling you, your day rate would be amazing. Because they don't tell you that. They tell you, oh, you'll get a training contract, you become a lawyer, get a salary, and that's it. But as a lawyer, you could contract as well. You can contract your services as a lawyer. There's so many of my friends who are lawyers that are now contractors, because your girl had to bring them in and say, hi, everybody. Hello, how are you? Okay. And, you know, the £29,000 grant is amazing to go and study, because it means that you don't have to pay that out of your own money. But I do recognise the pay disparity in Manchester and in London. But the reality is the pool of training contracts in London is less than the ratio of people who require those training contracts. So I'm not surprised that you were able to get a training contract but out of London. And I think that there is this illusion with London, and I'm very much disillusioned with London. You may get this training contract in Manchester and it will open a pathway to other law firms in Manchester. I hear that Manchester is amazing, honey. And I'm hearing that Manchester is the place to be. And I'm sure the house prices are not as expensive as in London. And I think you need to open up your mind to the possibility that this is a door to your next chapter. And whilst it wasn't your first choice, I feel like it is a choice. A bird in hand is more than one in a bush. That's what my mum always used to say to me. And the meaning of that is what you have and what you can see is more than what you cannot see in a bush. So the bird in hand you have is this training contract. And whilst the conditions of it may not be exactly what you want, you have a boyfriend who has no training contract. He has no grant, and yet he's doing his SQE. And I'm sure he would rather be in a position where he has a training contract. I'm going to put something to you. You applied for a training contract in London and Manchester because you know deep down inside the likelihood of you getting the training contract in London was slim. You applied for the Manchester one because you knew that the scope of possibility of you getting that was high. So you already processed the possibility and the likelihood that you would have to compromise certain things to be able to fulfill your training contract in Manchester. And for that reason and that reason alone, I think you should consider taking it. And I think that you need to understand, as you've written here, but fully embrace that this law firm is not your last stop. In fact, I don't think I have any friends who qualified in one solicitor's firm and stayed there. Listen, you owe loyalty only to yourself. Gone are the days of misplaced loyalty to organizations. You still had to apply for that training contract. You still had to interview for it. You will still have to sit exams to become a qualified lawyer. this organization and this law firm are not doing you any favors. You still had to go through a process. So you don't owe them anything. What you need to do is be strategic and play the game to get what you want. And that is completing your training contract and doing all your seats. Once you have that in your hand, no one can take that away from you. And then what you get to do is be the architect of your career. So what I am going to say is, you should speak to the ancestors, pray over it, and really embrace the opportunity here to qualify as a lawyer. And then you get the £29,000 grant, and you get 1 year to do to 1 year off your, so you can concentrate on it. Girl, if you don't take that training contract, you better get to the bag, honey. Because the sooner you become a lawyer is the sooner you get to the bag. And once you have qualified and you look at where you want to practice, please consider contracting. I have the contracting and interim masterclass. I will personally direct you in the direction of employment agencies that I personally know that deal with solicitors and lawyers who are contractors. Your starting day rate could be anything from £500 a day right up into £700 a day starting day rate. I know that when I started contracting, that was not my start day rate. Okay, girl. But we all know where we are now. But the point is, I think that this is something you should consider because you already considered it. That's why you applied. So I hope that's helped you. And I hope that gives you some support in whatever decision you make. We love a follow-up story, girl. So make sure if you're listening to this, thank you so much for being so brave and so open. And your anonymity, as you have heard, has been protected. But please, please, please write into us and tell us what happened or what decision you made. And when you qualify, hit us up and let us know how it went, because I know it's going to be a journey. And big shout out and congratulations to you and your boyfriend for going through this phase in your life of studying law, because it ain't easy. I did my LPC and I did my master's in law. And I'm going to tell you now that LPC swung my brain, okay? It was a lot. And I had already done my LLB undergrad. It was a lot, okay? I think that my LPC was the hardest exams I've ever done in my life. And I remember saying to my dad, I will never ever go into education again. And then I ended up doing my level 4-6. But I digress. The point is, it's a commitment. And I'm so proud of you. And congratulations on being offered this training contract. Congratulations on the success that I am also seeing in your future when you pass those exams. And well done to you and your boyfriend. And thank you so much for writing in. I really appreciate it. So I hope that's helped you. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I should be back in 2 weeks' time. All things being equal, and the gods and the ancestors coming together to allow that to happen. If you want to follow me, I'm on social media. So my TikTok account is Toya Washington, which is Toya Washington, all one word. I'm also on Instagram, Toya_Washington, and the podcast is on Instagram, Toya_Talks. If you want to really deep dive and basically forge ahead with your career and really invest in your career and your strategy, and being able to really understand how to navigate work as well as using the podcast, go on my website, toyatalks.com. I have masterclasses on there that will help you. I have so many success stories of people who have managed to emigrate to different countries with a role, gone in a completely different direction to what they studied, and actually just created a healthy space for them in the world of work. Being able to manage their redundancy process and get the maximum amount of money, be able to become a contractor in whatever chosen field, because I forever reiterate this podcast, this platform is not just for people in the corporate world. I am no longer in the corporate world, honey. I'm in the working world. This podcast and this platform is for anybody who is in the working world, because whether it's corporate or not, honey, we are still in the trenches together. And also, like the interview masterclass, for example, understanding the concept of interviews and being able to ask certain questions, managing an interview so that you can walk away and say, you know what, I did my best there. What does your best look like? What questions should you be asking the interviewer? The maternity masterclass, that is probably that masterclass, for me, of all the masterclasses, I feel like that one is the one that I was so passionate about because there's so much ignorance floating around. As a contractor, as a per member of staff, that maternity masterclass is for you. You need to know what your rights are, because if you expect an organization to tell you your rights, that's not going to happen. And how to enforce your rights. What are you entitled to? How do you go about obtaining that? That is there on the maternity masterclass. So make sure you go and check out the masterclasses, or if you just want to know what masterclasses are available for future purchase, then go on my website, www.toytalks.com. I'm going to leave it there. If you have a work-related dilemma or a life-related dilemma, and you think we can discuss it and help you here on the Toy Talks podcast, your anonymity will be protected. Please email hello@toytalks.com. Bear in mind, I do post a new episode bi-weekly, so just know when you're sending it to ensure that it will be answered when you need it and it won't lapse. So if you need me to come back on it urgently, I will endeavor to come back to you directly. But if it's for a podcast, then you have to know in your mind when the last podcast came out, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I need to do bath time with my daughter and I need to put her to bed. And I possibly think that I'm going to have a nice ice cold Ribena. Yeah, that's my jam at the moment. Also as well, before I wrap up, The Real Housewives of Lagos season 2. We're gonna get into it as well, because there's certain things I watch. I have to come here and talk. There's life lessons we need to learn from people. Okay, it's not when we make our mistakes. When people are making mistakes, we learn from them. And also, I like, for me, I'm a maternity honey, because I'll be watching these reality shows anyway out of maternity. But that's my excuse for now. So I'm definitely gonna come on here and talk about The Real Housewives of Lagos season 2, because I love that. And sometimes I feel like we need to kind of keep it light as well sometimes. Anyway, my name is Toy Washington, and you have been diligently, committedly, supportively listening to the Toy Talks podcast.